And we are live. Welcome once again, everyone, to Legalbytes, where we explain the law one bite at a time. As always, I have some wonderful guests with me. You know these guys if you've been around. You have Legal Mindset. Say hi.
What's up, guys? Good to see you. Hey, they were not waiting on me. I was on time for this one. You know, I never show up on time for my own streams, but for Alita, I will always be there.
Thank you. And then we have Good Logic.
Hey, how you all doing? I was late, but not nearly as late as we were. It was Nate started running off at the mouth, and Alita was too polite to interrupt him. So
that is
as
true.
Usual.
That's true.
That's like my biggest crutch, right? The thing that always gets me on these live streams. People comment on it. I know, I'm aware of it, but whatever, we'll get through it. And we have, of course, Nate.
Hey, what's going on? Hey, my camera's not on. You guys have been sitting here all this time and didn't even mention my camera wasn't on?
Well, I thought that was intentional.
You never have your camera on. You're the one guy who's always turning your camera off.
I never have my camera on.
I figured that. I don't know if you're Jeffrey Tubing. I don't know what you're doing, but your camera is off more often than any other panelist by far.
Yeah. Either that or it's like the color bars of death.
Yeah. Oh no, there you
go. That's much better.
Oh no!
All
right. There we go.
There you are. Now we know it's actually you.
Sorry about that, guys.
Nate the lawyer catfishing, you know.
Catfish by Nate the
I
lawyer.
hate you guys.
So, hello everyone. It's wonderful to see a bunch of people in the chat. And hey, Kurt, Uncivil Law is here too. Kurt, if you want to join us, I'll send you the link also. Let me know. You know what? I'll just go ahead and DM the link. Or if one of you guys want to DM him.
We all know Nate's on his way out of here. He's always got one foot out the door. He's got places to go.
Yes, I'm moving, baby.
Moving places. So I can't believe it's already Thursday. Does it feel like it's been a fast week?
It's been a hell of a
Thursday,
week,
Yeah. It's been a fast week because of either Columbus Day or National Indigenous Peoples Day, depending on your persuasion. Well, I mean, I don't know. It depends on your perspective, I guess, right? So, let's see. Oh, we have a super chat. Thank you, Andy, for your super chat. Google search Phil. How do you pronounce that? Do you guys know? Giroux. I feel like my French-speaking husband is like rolling his eyes right now. From the Tom Green Show. That is Legal Mindset's doppelganger. We're going to have to look that up and maybe share a screen on that one.
I feel some memes are coming now. Gosh dang
it. So we'll have to check that out and see if we can do that. Let's look this up.
Oh man. Okay. Well, I appreciate that, and thank you for the super chat and supporting the Leaders channel, because supporting us always really helps because we need it. The algorithm is not in our favor, so we appreciate it when you guys are. It's always nice.
Yes.
Unless it's U.S. soccer. Let's be honest. U.S. soccer, the algorithm is in our favor.
Yes.
We also may get a little away from the Gabby Petito stuff. So putting anything Gabby may get us a little bit on the crest of that wave.
Oh yeah, I have to. That's the other thing that I have to keep in mind is I've got to keep watching whether we're monetized or not, or whether we go yellow like immediately because of that. So I guess before we get into like some of the more fun kind of chummy stuff, I wanted to talk about Gabby Petito. And I want to do that obviously in a way that is respectful because there's it's a very heavy subject, So let's before we get into, like I said, the chummy stuff. So I don't know if you guys have been keeping up with that whole investigation, the stuff that's been going on. I mean, it seems like almost every day there's some new development.
Who's Gabby Petito?
Is somebody
eating serious?
I'm totally kidding.
Okay. I'm like, wait a minute, we've talked about this before.
I was doing the whole leftist, like, why are we talking so much about missing white women?
Of course.
That was so stupid.
Also, Joe.
That was a hot bad take.
Yeah. Joe, Eldon Bandling is happy that you found your NYPD hat.
I went to Chicago this week. I drove back and forth, so I'm still like on lag from Central Time and from 24 hours of driving. So, and on the way, I lost this, and I was like curled in a fetal position, so upset. And thank God I found it this morning. So I'm very excited.
Thank goodness.
I
Yeah.
appreciate the support, Eldon.
Yeah, and thank you so much for the support, Eldon Melanie. So the whole Gabby Petito thing. So I guess apparently Brian Laundrie is still missing out in the wilderness, which is nuts, right? It seems like it's becoming less and less likely that he's going to be found or maybe found alive.
He's not in Florida. I'll tell you that.
You don't think so?
No,
you think he skipped town?
Appalachian Trail. That was on my channel when I was doing the prediction.
You think he's still in the country?
I don't think he went out. He's the resources you need and the connections.
It's not that hard to get to Canada, right? I mean, there's so many border crossings. It's not like anyone's monitoring the border with Canada. And once you're in Canada, it's probably easier for them to get out.
Right now with COVID,
but now they are though.
Isn't it easier to get out of the United States going toward Mexico than it is to come in?
Yes.
Like every time I've gone to Mexico, it's just a straight drive. Nobody checks any papers. But coming back, it's like, oh my God.
That's true.
Yeah, it's like crazy.
Right. Just take the same path as the Haitians and you'll be all right.
Yeah. And we know he's down. But and we know maybe he put on blackface and got shipped back with the rest of the Haitians.
Oh my gosh! Oh no! Oh Lord!
I'm so sorry.
Okay, bye guys. It's nice having a channel. Oh man, but yeah. So he's still missing. There's so much. There's a lot of commentary about his parents, his family. Maybe they're helping out. There's a lot of people are even starting to like bang on his parents' front door, like yelling at them about, what their son must have done. And, of course, these are allegations. He actually hasn't been formally charged with her death, with her murder. But I mean, it's just to try to find someone that has viewed these facts as impartially as possible and to get them to say, like, I don't think he did it, is really hard.
Right. Especially with the cause of the
man of did it.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going at.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So we knew, I think last week we knew what her manner of death was, right? Which was her manner of death was determined to be a homicide, which that just means that it's the death at the hands of either, I think specifically another person,
unnatural,
right?
Yes.
Yeah, an unnatural death. So not an accident, not a suicide, not not like a exactly. So that's what we knew up until this week. And then 2 days ago, the coroner came out with their actual autopsy report. And so now we know that she died of strangulation specifically. We don't know if it was, any kind of details beyond that, right? We don't know if there was anything else that was used or, whatever. So yeah. So now we know that. And according to the coroner also, or I think maybe it was other investigators, but yeah, not the coroner. Other investigators were looking at the scene and determined that based on the circumstances of the scene of her death, it doesn't look like there was anything that she had done to cause any sort of injury or any sort of violence there. Basically meaning she didn't struggle or fight anyone on her own, it sounds like. So yeah.
Well, I have a question for Nate, because Nate, you've got a more police background, so you're the guy. Like, I want to ask you about this, because so when you hear about I was looking into it as strangulation, throttling. When I hear that, and when I've heard that, I usually typically think, and when I'm reading into the case facts, think that's somebody who's not using tools or not using anything else. That's hands. It's a manual. So they're kind of indicating that this was done by a human, just barehanded.
Yeah, well, when I heard strangulation, I automatically took me back to the DA's office. I'll say most of the times when you had domestic violence, a lot of times it came along with strangulation, right? Somebody, the husband puts the hand around the woman's throat, and it's I hate to say it's very common, but it is a common thing. So generally, you have a domestic violence incident, and then you would charge him with the strangulation, the closing with the windpipe. It's pretty frequent. So when I saw that triggered all that. But then it kind of puts everything, because whenever you're looking at a particular crime incident, the best thing to do is first establish the timeline of events. What happened, when everything happened, so you can kind of figure out, where things belong. Because right now we have a whole bunch of facts, but they're all kind of in this weird space. So the first thing is we had the police incident when they were confronted by the police from the call, right? When we saw the body camera footage, right? So we know she was alive then, and that was 4 weeks before he went to Florida, right?
Yes.
Then they said when they found the body, she had died maybe 3 to 4 weeks ago. So if you look at the timeline, we're talking about maybe a week after that body cam footage. We're talking about she was strangled to death, and then after that.
Can you use dates?
Yes. Okay. So she was found on September 19th, and the coroner said that she probably died 3 to 4 weeks before that date. So that puts her around August 22nd to August 29th. From the timelines that I've seen, the 27th was the last day that other witnesses reported seeing her alive in person, because they apparently they got Brian and Gabby got into some sort of a really nasty argument in a restaurant in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And then later that afternoon was when the footage was recorded by the Van Life family that happened to see their van off on the side of the road, off the dirt road nearby an abandoned campsite, and it was just by itself. And that was where they alerted the authorities, and where they found Gabby not far from there. So all of those facts altogether seem to suggest she probably died on the 27th.
Or somewhere that weekend.
Close to that. Yeah, let's go close to that. And then if you put the next fact about him using her credit card. Yeah. Right, unauthorized.
And when was that? When was that? Do we know when that was?
Well, what's the charge? Because it's on the arrest warrant.
Ryan. Yeah, that's the one detail that I'm not aware of.
September maybe, or like first week.
Right, it's listed on the arrest warrant. I'm just pulling it up.
And also, when did he drive back home? When did he drive back in her car?
I think September 1st was when he arrived back in Florida.
So already in September 1st, he's back in Florida.
He booked it.
Yeah, I know. Yes. He did it in like 2 or 3 days, and he was going like thousands of miles driving by himself, which that's not easy.
I mean, I've driven from California to the East Coast, various parts of the East Coast before, and that takes several days, and that's a long. I mean, even when you're driving most of the day, that's hard, especially doing that by yourself.
I've driven to Florida to Texas, and it's tough. I mean, those are boring states.
I've been in New York.
This week I went from Jersey to Chicago, and that's 900 miles, and it's 11. If I was doing like 90 much of the way, and it's 10, 11 hours. You have to stop every once in a while for gas. You have to stop to actually breathe for a few minutes.
Yeah, go to the bathroom. Walk around.
Use the bathroom. I mean, guys don't always necessarily have to stop to use that, but the point is if he's really booking it, if he's really hightailing it. But
all right.
So that it took him had to take at least 3, which means basically assuming he is the murderer, she had to be dead by the 29th, the latest.
Well,
if she's back on the 1st.
This is from the FBI's documents. So the FBI is seeking information from Spread Creek dispensary camping area from August 27th to August 30th. That's what they put in the arrest warrant. And they charged him with unauthorized use from August 30th to September 1st. So from what this seems to suggest is that she was dead by August 30th. He's using a card August 30th and September 1st, and he pulled out X amount of money, and that's why they've indicted him for that. So that's what it looks like. They had the argument. She had the string, but now they can't prove the strangulation. So what they're trying to do is say, we're going to keep him from this unauthorized use of devices until we can prove up the homicide.
Yeah. Also, I would point out, and I've said this a couple times before, but got some new people here, and that is when the DA charges him for the bank fraud, So as her fiance, boyfriend, etc., in a normal circumstance, if he had an alibi, like let's say he was in Europe during the time of death, and we know that it wasn't him, and he's using her bank card days after her death. So it would be really easy for him to take the stand and explain away why he's using her card and not face any charges. These charges have potential being up to 30 years. So that's a very serious charge. And because it's over $1,000, it's a felony. Whether someone would get someone would get 30 years, it seems unlikely, but still it has potential up to 30 years. So it'd be really easy, and I'm sure that his counsel would advise him. It's one of those rare instances. Take the stand, explain why it is that you had a right to use her card, that she told you to use her card, that she'd given you the card, and then, but the problem with this circumstance where he is a suspect in the murder, even though he hasn't been charged, now he's facing a problem that once he gets up there and starts explaining to try to get out of the bank charge why it is that he had justification or right as her boyfriend, or was his money, or whatever explanation he's going to give, now that opens up the door for the DA to drill him on the stand and start asking, really? So she authorized to use it. When's the last time you saw her? What was the circumstance there? What was the nature of that conversation? How did you end up in her car driving from here? All these questions that he wouldn't normally have to answer because he's able to plead the fifth. If he comes up to the stand to defend on the bank fraud, he's exposing himself to potentially facing serious liability for murder. So I don't know how he could possibly take the stand in this context. He'd be an idiot to take it. Rather, he has to basically sit there and mute on the bank fraud. Yeah, assuming they ever find this guy.
But the thing is, I think he can easily work his way around it, because they would have to prove that she didn't give him authorization. Because they'd have to prove
no, they wouldn't.
She was dead.
Why would they have to prove that?
That's an essential element.
It's an unauthorized.
There's no assumption. Okay, so hold on a second. If you use my bank card.
The DA's office. Yes,
if you use my bank card,
that I was unauthorized.
There's no assumption. There's no assumption that you're illegally using my bank card.
All right, the assumption is for probable cause, but to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, they have to prove that I was actually unauthorized. Right? So they can arrest me and prosecute me right off that assumption, but they still have to prove to a jury that I was actually unauthorized. If they can't prove that I was unauthorized to use it, they can't get a conviction. The conviction is about the proof. You're talking about the accusation. Yes.
I mean, Joe, think about it. Then you're convicting,
you're just not assumed.
Fraud,
yeah, you're just not assumed.
I would assume that that's a natural assumption of the law, that if your name is not on the account, if you're not named on the account, and they've got video evidence from those ATM machines with the videos shooting you the whole time, that you were the one using this card, and it's not your name on the account, it's not your card. I would have assumed that, look, I could be wrong. You're the one with the police background. I'm not a criminal defense. I would have thought that there's an automatic, rebuttable assumption that this was bank fraud, that the person, and that's not an element you now need to prove. That all of a sudden, hey, how did somebody who's got no relationship to me, they're not a blood relation, they're not anything to me, they're using my card, and now you tell me the DA has to prove it, and if the person doesn't come forward and testify, the DA's got nothing.
But Joe, you just slipped in a whole bunch of crazy facts.
What fact did I slip in is different?
This is her fiance. So that's a big fact. And you
How do you know that? How do you know that? How do you know that? How do you know it's her fiance? No. He would have to come up and say, I was her fiance. That's my point. He would have to testify and say, I was her fiance.
That's a material fact of the case. Yeah, that's a.
What's judicial notice? What do you think? There's evidence of the fact that this is her fiance?
Yes, social media.
Yeah, you don't have to have him testify to that. You can have the parents testify to that. You can have his parents testify to that. Yeah, that's
friends. There's also friends that have said that.
There's definitely not judicial notice. There's definitely not judicial notice.
No, it's not judicial notice. What you would do, but listen, Joe, the way it would work is that the government has to prove each element of the crime beyond a reasonable doubt. And in this crime, one of the key elements is unauthorized use. So it's now on the government to say, was this unauthorized use? Now, what you're talking about, which I do agree, is a circumstantial case. Well, how could he be authorized if she was dead? So you're making a circumstantial case where you're trying to say, look at these facts and have the jury infer guilt. But that doesn't alleviate the prosecution's burden to prove that he's guilty. Now, the way he would prove that they had this relationship, here's the video of us doing van life. Here's my parents who she was living with us. And the parents would testify that, hey, they were engaged, they were in love, blah, 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 blah. And I think
she
a
also
reasonable
said it
jury
on I think she also said it on the police body cam. I think she explained to them that they were. So that's from her mouth.
And then I would say this: if they have pictures of him using this credit card in other times without her, because I'm assuming they did that. I use my wife's credit card sometimes; she uses mine. If they have other pictures of him using the credit card at other times, then I think what happens is you may not survive a motion to dismiss, because based on these facts, you could probably put up there that, hey, you don't have enough to prove that he was unauthorized. I think right now the only thing they have is the fact that she might have been dead when he used it, but even that is tenuous at best.
Because they would have to show that he knew that well, I mean, not even that. Because if they considered that account to be a joint account, even though it was her name on it, even after he knew that she was dead,
it's a joint account. You have full access to it if it's a joint account.
Well, right.
Yeah, but he wouldn't have been arrested. He would have been arrested
right
if it's a joint account.
Right. If his name was on the account, that wouldn't be one. But yeah, no, there are ways that he could dance around it. I mean, if he could argue that I didn't know that she was dead. I thought that she ran off to Canada with some other dude or something, like he could come up with some sort of BS, argument and try to get around that. Whether you believe it or not is another story, but he could make the claim,
Well, but the point is getting him on the stand, though. Once he's on the stand now, all of a sudden, this opens up a whole new Pandora's box for him.
Sure, yeah.
I would not put him on the stand. Our argument is he's always been authorized. For the past 2 years, he's been authorized. Now, all of a sudden, you're saying he wasn't authorized for 2 days? That doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
He's been authorized. Yeah. That was his fiancé.
Of
course he's authorized. That would be my argument.
You guys have a copy of the charge? Because I want to look up those elements while you guys are talking. You have a copy of that? Which charge?
It's
federal,
I'm going to put the link to the warrant in the private chat so you can see it.
All right, cool. Thanks.
So there's an article that has the warrant, that has the charge.
Yeah,
I got it.
Here, I'll share it on the screen.
So it has both the indictment, the arrest warrant, and the charge. And just so everybody understands, the arrest warrant is totally unnecessary because when you get an indictment, the indictment is probable cause, so you can do a warrantless arrest because the indictment's enough. The arrest warrant is just they want to be. I don't know. They just want to do extra shit, but you don't need the indictment. You just need the arrest. You don't need the arrest warrant. You just need the indictment.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. This one is.
It's 1029.
If you scroll down a little bit, you'll see it.
There we go. Okay, this one right here.
Yeah, and you see the arrows going south. So this is the announcement. Yeah. If you scroll to like the third one, it's the indictment.
Okay. Oh, I see.
You see where it says left and right?
Right here.
Arrow.
Yeah.
That's the indictment.
Yeah, there's a so on this, it's like knowing, the elements. Looking up 1029, Joe.
Yeah, I'm looking at it also.
Yeah. So from August 30th through on or about September 1st. Okay.
So
whoever knowingly
dead at that time.
So let's break this down. Whoever knowingly and with intent to defraud produces, uses, or traffics in one or more counterfeit access devices. So you're telling me that in theory he could win on a motion to dismiss because they can't prove what? Which part of this? That he wasn't knowingly
unauthorized.
Knowing and unauthorized.
Yeah.
How do you prove that he was knowingly unauthorized? Unless you could prove he killed her. If you could prove he killed her, then obviously you got unauthorized. Yeah, but unless you but if he can just say I walked away and I had the cards and I went to get some money, well, he was authorized. And usually the way you would prove this is that you'd have the person whose card it was say, I didn't authorize this person to use my card. Boom.
Obviously, you can't do that.
Okay,
in this case.
let me hold on a second. Let's just think this through here. Let's assume he did not kill her. Okay, let's assume that beyond everyone's belief, he's not the murderer here. Okay, under what circumstance is he leaving in her car and 2 days later using her credit card? If he dumped her and walked out on her, why is he using her credit card 2 days later? How is that not? How is that no? How do you? I don't know.
You need to come up with a convoluted scenario. I mean, maybe they're like, let's take a break. Who knows? You know, I mean,
Joe.
Like, here's the credit card. Buy yourself a coffee on the way out. I don't know. I mean,
Joe, we $1,000. Joe, I want to make it very clear. I agree with you, Joe. I think this guy did it. I think he's.
No, I know you agree with me. But I'm just trying to figure out.
But how do you? But to prove it is a whole different animal, and I don't think I don't think right now they have enough to prove. This is enough to arrest, but this is not enough to prove. He did it.
And I'm respectfully disagreeing with my learned counsel
here,
and I'm saying that I think they have enough to get him to get a conviction for this bank warrant if he refuses to take the stand. And if I was his counsel, I would still tell him don't take the stand, because whatever you're facing on this bank warrant, assuming that were the case, assuming that they hadn't dead to rights, he still cannot take the stand, because whatever he gets charged with, it still is what? It's $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. In a normal case, the judge would say, make restitution. I will give you 6 months probation, and that's it. They're not going to, even though the maximum crime is 30-year penalty. The maximum penalty is 30 years. There's no way a judge would give him that for stealing $5,000.
Well, just so people understand too, the way the sentencing guidelines work. Yes, like for instance, Lori Loughlin. When she pleaded guilty to a crime for like 25 years in prison. She got 2 weeks, right? Because it's a first-time offender. There's sentencing guidelines. So even though this is a 40-year sentence, he's not going to get more than maybe a couple of weeks or even a couple of months if he's convicted.
He probably get probation.
Yeah. This is not going to be something. And we're talking about not that much money. But again, I just respectfully disagree. I don't think if I was the DA on this,
there's enough for conviction even.
It's enough for an arrest, but conviction, we're at a whole different level, because there's no way I can prove. I know I can prove that.
They would need to get pretty much everything from him. Really, I mean, he's got to be pulled in at the very least. I mean, him being off in the Florida wilderness or Appalachian Trail or wherever, Mexico, Canada, who knows? That's not enough.
By your argument, anytime someone dies and a person breaks into their house and steals their credit cards and uses and buys millions of dollars worth of stuff, that there's no way you can convict them. How are you going to convict them?
Totally different.
It depends. It depends on the relationship.
You guys are all making a big thing about their relationship as far as being fiance, as if that exonerates him without him taking the stand. We're talking he's not on the stand.
You're bipolar. No. It's like one or the other. It's like
no, because you guys are melting together, and this is what I'm vehemently disagreeing with you. You guys are melting together this fact that since he's a fiance, all of a sudden this creates the presumption against this being theft disappears, and I don't buy that. I don't think that's true. I don't think under the law that makes sense.
All right, Joe. Let me. All right,
presumption.
All right. So first thing, he's presumed innocent.
Right.
Presumption is on him. He's presumed innocent. Okay. So since he's presumed innocent, the presumption is he was authorized to use the card, right? He is presumed innocent. So when you go into court, he's going like, "This is an innocent guy." He's presumed innocent.
That's not the presumption of innocence. No.
He is presumed innocent.
I disagree. I respectfully disagree with you. You're saying it's presumed. You're saying it's presumed that he's authorized. That I would not say.
Yes, he is presumed authorized until they prove that he was unauthorized. Yes.
Okay. But as far
as the reality.
I'm sorry. I don't want to cut off. I want to let all of you get your voices out before I rebut and show you how completely wrong you are.
So let's do one at a time. So so in your example, you said anyone who dies, someone can break into their house, steal their credit cards, and use their credit cards, and then they'll have that issue. I'm telling you that your hypothetical is not only a red herring, but it has nothing to do with this particular case. The reason why is if you die and someone randomly uses one of your credit cards, two things happen. Number one, they've now, you have to kind of figure out, well, hold on, what relationship do you have to this person? And have you ever authorized this person in the past to use these cards? If some random person who just stole your credit card, it's just like any other theft case, right? The presumption there is that, this is something different. And then obviously you personally knew that it wasn't your credit card, right? So then, it's going to be assumed that in that particular case, that now, that you are unauthorized. But in this case, with these facts,
wait, so would that need to be proven or that assumption? Time out. I just want to ask you this to clarify what you just said. So you're saying they would need to prove that, or there would be an assumption in that situation? That the state would not even need to prove.
They'd have to prove the person took the card. They could have to prove the person didn't have a relationship with this person, and then the jury would make an inference. Right? They can make an inference that he was approved, or they can make an inference that he was not approved. Right? But that's
you just took a leap. I disagree with.
Jury. Go ahead.
I think you took unless you researched and you found this to be the case, which in that case, power to you, which I have not researched this. You're saying that once we know it's not your account, that now the burden still falls on the state to prove that there's zero relationship. They have to prove a non-fact, basically. They have to prove that there's no relationship here. How could they ever prove? How could they ever sustain that burden that there's no relationship? Maybe the person who robs me will claim that we were good friends, and that one time I let him use the card in the past. Yeah, so okay, but what I'm saying is,
you can claim it,
would he have to take the stand?
Have to show that if that's true.
Would the defendant? If he doesn't take the stand. So you're telling me that the jury is charged. This is how the jury is charged. That assuming John Doe dies, 3 days later, some guy comes into his house, takes his card, and uses it to buy a yacht. Okay? And now you're telling me that the assumption is that maybe this guy is authorized unless the state can prove that he was unauthorized.
Hold on. Let me butt in here.
Go ahead, Alina.
Let me butt in here. Okay, so there's a lot of details that you add in here that are very different than the current situation. But for example, somebody breaking into your house and taking your debit card. Number one, that would be breaking and entering. That's its own thing. On top of that, then you've got the unauthorized use of the card. So those are two separate things that you would separate. Number three, you've got the guy that is now buying a yacht with a card that is belonging to presumably his friend who just died.
Well, as far as we know, burden proves on the state.
Okay,
burden proves on the state.
But I'm just talking about the facts of the hypothetical here.
Okay, so the hypothetical. So the credit card was on his front porch. You don't have to have breaking and enter.
Okay, sure. But we're talking about him buying a yacht now. You would also be looking at the facts of the purchases in the past that have been made. So if the friend who didn't own the debit card, was allowed to make purchases on his now deceased friend's debit card, those kind of purchases, if they were for things like gum or going to pick up milk or gas or something like that, that's very different than buying a yacht. So you can distinguish between those two, because those are very small purchases versus something that is thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's a very different kind of purchase. So those kind of facts would also come in to distinguish whether that was authorized or not, whether that's similar to the kind of purchases that were made previously on that card with authorization, or is this guy now saying, oh, hey, now I don't have to ask, I don't have him looking over me, so I can go nuts, I can go bananas and go on a shopping spree. That's different.
Well, okay, I do want to hold on, but before you respond to that, Joe, I think maybe it would be best if I'd explain how generally these things are prosecuted in just the real world context, right?
Okay.
If someone steals some dead person's credit card and uses it, right? There are generally two ways that the government proves that this is unauthorized use. Number one, what did they have in relation? Is there any evidence in the past that this person was authorized this person to use it? If you don't have that, that's one piece of evidence that says, okay, this person may not have been authorized in the past. The second thing that they would do is then go to the bank, because how sometimes when you authorize people to use your cards, you have this bank authorization, and you'll say, hey, these are the people who are authorized to use my card. So then you look at that and you say, well, was this person authorized by the bank? So then you'll have the bank person come up and you'll have that person testify, hey, this person was the sole owner and this person had no one else authorized to use this card. So then what they would do is take those facts and say, give it to the jury. Well, this person didn't have a relationship with this person didn't have any paperwork to show that they were legally authorized to do it. So we're going to ask the jury to, as a finding of fact, to say that this person was unauthorized to use it based on this evidence that we provide. In this case, though, different, because these people did have a relationship. This person probably did use the card before. This person knew the PIN number, right? So those facts are different. So in this case, you're asking the jury to now make a leap to say, well, now all of a sudden he stopped being authorized at this particular point in time. Now you got to prove why. Now you got to prove that actually happened. Now you got to prove that in some way she did something to say that you're not authorized on this day at this time. So after that, because now you're talking about the inference the jury is a reasonable jury would make was that he was still authorized, and like you said, How did he know she was dead? Because if you can't prove that he knew she was dead or he knew she was incapacitated and he was still using the card, then I think a reasonable jury will come to the conclusion that you can't prove that he was unauthorized because he had the PIN number. He's used it before. He's got this relationship. That's different than a stranger. So in your case, yes, in some instances, the jury can infer based on the evidence they have in front of them. And that's why you have the bank people come testify, versus in this case where I don't think you have that. And I think you can't get a conviction based on this evidence. All
right. So with respect to what Alita said, I'll get into the wording of the statute. With the wording of the statute is we have a threshold of $1,000. You cross that threshold, then you're culpable of committing the crime. You don't cross that threshold, you're not culpable. So once he crosses that threshold, there's no difference under the eyes of the law, under the wording of this statute, between taking $1,000 from a bank account or buying a yacht. It's the same thing. To our natural sense of logic and fairness, it doesn't seem at all the same. But under the wording of the statute, once you cross that threshold of 1,000, he might as well have bought a yacht. So that's why I gave the example of a yacht, because I know it offends the notion that shouldn't be the case. And once I paint it in that way, well, in that case, you can understand why this doesn't seem logical to me. And the law makes no distinction between $1,001 and a yacht. And that's why I use that example specifically. I made the fact a little different because under the odds of the law, it's the same. Now, that being said, coming to what Nate said, I would assume first and foremost, if he's charged with this crime, that he's not listed as an authorized user of this account. Because if he was an authorized user of the account, they never would have charged him. So we can assume that step 2 is not there. So that brings us back to the only other thing as far as the existence of a relationship. And I would agree with you. I would agree with you that if there is a history of use because of an existence of a relationship, well, in that case, it makes sense that we don't all of a sudden assume that relationship dies at the moment of death, especially when, for all we know, he didn't know she's dead. He might have thought she's still alive.
Right.
Right?
Correct.
So under that, I agree with you on that. My question that I'm posing to all three of you is, how do we get to a place where the state has an onus to prove that there's no relationship, rather than the defendant having a duty to prove that there is a relationship? Now, you all want to say, and I understand that you're going to say that because of all the circumstantial evidence. So you're saying the state is obligated to share this circumstantial evidence? I guess in theory, the best argument against me, and I'm not looking to win an argument. I'm looking to search out truth. The best argument is that he could have family members come forward and say they were really close. In fact, here's video evidence of the nature of the relationship. So, he was able to use her card and he had authorization to use that. And I do think that makes sense. I think that's a fair thing. But I don't think that it's on the state to prove there's no relationship. On my expectation, because of these other scenarios, which can very foreseeably happen, where a next door neighbor uses a credit card of someone who's dead. I mean, it doesn't have to be a total stranger. A next door neighbor who knows that the guy's dead, a day later ends up using it to buy a car for themselves. So in that case, the onus comes on them to show why you're using this card to buy that car. And that's what I would assume that the onus, once your name is not on the account, the onus would flip to the defendant. At the same time, I concur with you guys that he would not need to take the stand in order to show that he has this relationship, and through that can create enough reasonable doubt that he would avoid conviction. Does that make sense? Does that everything? Yeah, are we all on the same page now?
No, and Joe, when you were saying the best argument, I'm just thinking about, I don't know, maybe I just had too many sketchy criminal friends as a child, but I don't know how joyriding works in New York, but that happened all the time in my neck of the woods, where, hey, somebody would take somebody's car, they get caught, they didn't have the paperwork, right? So they get maybe charged with joyriding, but part of that, proving that, is you have to prove that they were willful and unauthorized. That's just one of the elements, and they can never get anybody because they were always authorized. So I just look at those other statutes and say, look, they've got to prove it in these other instances. Why is it so weird that authority is an element here? I just don't understand the contention, this fundamental contention with needing to prove the unauthorization.
Touche.
Yeah.
I think the key fact here, though, that we have to all understand is that it is the government that has to prove every element of the crime. And in this crime, one of the elements, unfortunately, is unauthorized use. And I think there are facts here that can work in the government's favor. But at the end of the day, the onus is not on the defendant to prove that I was authorized. It's just like in the Kyle Rittenhouse case. Kyle Rittenhouse, a lot of people have this weird notion that Kyle Rittenhouse has to prove that he acted in self-defense. But if you look at the statute itself, makes it very clear that the state has to prove that he didn't act in self-defense, that he was unauthorized to use force. And it's a natural thing to say, well, prove to me that you were authorized. Yeah, in common parlance, that's true. But when the state is charging you with something, they're the ones who have to prove you weren't authorized. They were the ones who have to prove that you did not act with self-defense. That's the way it generally works in criminal law.
Yeah.
Hold on. They have to prove you didn't act in self-defense? You're telling me that the Kyle Rittenhouse murder and the Kyle
they got to prove
and Kyle Rittenhouse, the state. I'm just curious because this is obviously going to come relevant over the next couple of months. So that's one of the elements that the state has to prove is that he was not acting in self-defense?
Yes, the onus is on the state to prove that Kyle Rittenhouse was not acting in self-defense. Kyle Rittenhouse it is assumed it's actually in the statute, which I thought was pretty, and it's actually in the statute here in New York too. It's assumed that he was acting lawfully, and the state has to prove that he was acting unlawfully and was not authorized to use force in that way in self-defense. If you look at the Wisconsin statute, it says that, not verbatim, but it says that in there, and it actually says that in the New York statute. So
that makes it much less likely he'll take the stand. That makes it much less likely he'll take the stand then.
It's interesting because when you talk to most people about self-defense, they always think that, you got to prove that you were acting in self-defense. That's just not the case, unfortunately.
Right.
Well, fortunately, I should say. That's a good thing.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I want to say that when I mentioned to my husband that Good Logic was going to be back on the channel for a live stream, he got so excited because he's like, it's going to be so fiery again. He's always so fiery, and that has proven to be correct.
I bring it.
I love it.
Why don't you bring me on yours? I never come to you. I've brought you on mine, Legal Mindset. I've never had a chance to actually set foot in front of your viewers.
Oh,
so yeah,
you fired.
I thought you were on my show.
No, I've never been on your show.
Oh, well, we'll do it now. No, my connection's good. It probably was because my connection was bad. I don't know. And in Florida, there's some sketchy stuff going on. I got you, Joe.
I think it's probably anti-Semitism, actually.
Obviously. Obviously. No, I mean
Look, German is my most fluent second language for a reason. Okay.
Nice.
Oh no.
Nice. I like if I have to throw up a few mock Sig Heils to get on.
Dude. Here we go again.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. So when am I coming to your channel, Legal Minds?
No, next week. We'll come on next week. I'll bring you on next week.
All right, cool. All right, let's do that.
Oh man, and let me get a couple more super chats from Andy again. He wanted to know, who would you rather have as your spouse, Brian Laundrie or Carol Baskin?
I was laughing at earlier. I was like, oh
nice. Man. Well done, Andy.
This is my wonderful brother, you guys.
Oh, is he? That's your brother?
Yes.
Nice.
Oh, yes. God. Yep. That's
I want to share my screen because I think this is important. This is
wait. Do you guys have an answer who you would want?
For what? I'm sorry, I was looking up something.
Oh, who would you want as your spouse, Brian Laundrie or Carol Baskin?
Would you rather be strangled or fed to tigers? That's really the question.
Oh God! I mean, either way. I don't like my brother's hypothetical questions. he always asks these very uncomfortable hypothetical questions that are just like there's no good answer.
Well, Carol didn't kill her husband. She killed like her arch nemesis. So
that's true.
Yeah.
Well, it was her husband that she was accused of maybe killing.
Oh yeah, that's true. He brought up the whole thing.
No. Yes. I forgot about that. He's the one that disappeared.
Right. Yeah. Right, that is true.
Under very crazy circumstances.
Yes.
Pull up this. I shared my screen. Okay. I want to. This is just for our so we can do the law review thing.
Oh wait.
But I want to make it very clear. All right, now if you look at this, Joe, I'm going to roll it up. It says the defendant has raised self-defense as a justification, also known as self-defense. The defendant, however, is not required to prove that he was justified. The people are required to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant was not justified. So it's clear. This is the law in Wisconsin.
So
the law everywhere. You do never have to prove that you acted in self-defense. They got to prove you did not. That's the law.
So this is an interesting thing, and this might relate to the credit card thing also. So instead of pleading not guilty, you can plead not guilty with justification. Because they say the defendant has raised defensive justification. So obviously at some point, defense counsel had to say...
It's an affirmative defense.
Yeah, so the affirmative defense. So once you, I guess there's pleadings that he would respond. He has to respond to pleadings in a criminal case. Is there response? You have to respond to pleadings.
If you're arguing self-defense, you would raise self-defense, and then
when you raise self-defense, that's the pleadings.
It's on the government. Yes, and then it's on the government to prove that you weren't acting within self-defense.
So in theory,
the defendant never has to prove they did, and it's always the government that has to prove the defendant violated the law.
So Laundrie's counsel could put in authorization, and then that would raise the onus on the states to prove that there was no authorization.
He would
basically
have to admit there's a difference, though. There's a difference in facts, and that's very important here. Is that Kyle's pretty much saying, yes, I was the one who shot this person. He's never denying that he was the one who shot them. He's just saying I shot them in self-defense. Brian Laundrie has another option. He can say it wasn't me. He can do the Shaggy, right?
Right.
It wasn't me.
Right.
And I think that's a bigger one because he can say I wasn't there.
Well, I don't think the Shaggy thing would work for him because they very likely have video of him using the
We
car.
don't know that yet.
Okay. I mean, many of these ATMs have video.
Number, but they have the pin. They have him using. So they know. I think they have the video, but they also have him using the PIN number. He used the PIN number, and it's going to be hard for us. I think the government to argue that he wasn't authorized and he got the PIN number.
Right.
It's just and he used it before, and he's using it in the past. That's a real uphill battle.
I thought we were talking about self-defense for the potential homicide, right? Not for the self-defense for the PIN code, right? I mean, that's
we were talking.
Jumping back and forth. Okay, so one last super chat before we move on to another subject. My brother also wants to know who's the better road tripper.
Florida too. Oh God.
If anyone does not know who Lisa is, it Nowak or Novak? Do you guys know how to pronounce that?
I think it's Novak.
Yeah, I was thinking it was Novak.
I don't know who that is.
She's the astronaut that I guess she drove like 900 miles to attack her ex-husband or ex-boyfriend
in Orlando,
or someone
Florida.
who was another astronaut. She was wearing a diaper during the whole ride and that kind of craziness.
Wow.
She like made it in like record time. That is
with a diaper.
Yeah.
Space diaper.
Yeah.
I would actually take her on the road trip because I know she's committed to the drive.
She's thinking about these things, right? Like how to stay clean, stay hygienic. I don't know. I mean, I would probably go with her.
Right. I mean, I assume Brian Laundrie had a trucker buddy, so you guys can Google that.
For a little while of that too, right? He hitchhiked for
I wouldn't be surprised.
He did because he was picked up by a couple after he said that he was hiking for, I don't know how long, however many days or something. So that was one of the fact patterns.
When I saw that, it reminded me of there's something about Mary when he picked up the hitchhiker with the bag. You remember the 6-minute abs. I was like, oh my God, here we go again, hitchhiker.
Oh man. So I think we have really talked about that one quite a bit.
Yeah.
So let's talk about another fun topic. Monica Lewinsky scandal. It's a new hot topic now because of the series that has come out on FX, Impeachment, American Crime Story. I don't know. Have any of you guys seen this show?
I don't.
You lived it.
I haven't seen this one.
No, I'm old enough. I remember Monica. That's why I'm sure a lot of your viewers aren't old enough to really remember a lot about it. If you're probably too young to remember it, really.
I do remember it. I do remember it.
Monica Lewinsky with the cigar incident.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I was 9 and 10 years old when this was going on.
That's what I'm saying. You guys were all
about the same age.
Yes,
we're
really young.
Yeah,
how much did you know? How much did you guys know about it? I'm the only one who actually lived it.
Well, I can say that my mom always told me that she had a very open door policy, and she said if you have any questions about literally anything on this planet, You are free to ask me. Don't feel ashamed. But if you want to ask me, be ready for the answer. And I learned a lot during the impeachment.
So my parents were two different sides. So my mom, and shout out to my mom who's probably going to watch this. Hey, Mom. My mom, fervent Republican.
Hi, Mrs. Mindset.
My dad, Democrat. So, but also different mindset. So my mom is like, that's disgusting. I can't believe he would do that. That's so vile. It's so disgusting, blah, blah, blah. Versus my dad, who was like, oh, it's just a blowjob, and just, wasn't really fazed by it. And, you think about, my whole thing is you think about if this happened today and what would happen and, in the same scenario, and would the facts come out the same way? Would it be dealt with the same way? Would the same blowback come on Monica? Would the same blowback come on Bill or whoever the president is? It's really interesting because the era back then, we didn't have social media. We didn't have the internet the way we do. We didn't have lawyers getting on StreamYard and chopping it up. Much different.
It's so interesting. It's so interesting, especially to kind of rehash all of this, like 20 years later or whatever. And especially because in the current lens, right? Like Legalbytes and I were kind of talking about this a little bit backstage before you guys joined us, and about how it kind of hits a little bit differently right now, because back then the I guess cultural political machinery that was really like driving this kind of stuff was on the right? So you had your Ann Coulters, you had, all of these people on the right that were like, we need our president to be moral. We need our president, and any toe out of line, you're going to hell, like that kind of thing, like get out of here, you're gone. Whereas now today it's kind of flipped, right? You've got the other side. You've got cancel culture. You've got people that say, you say the wrong thing once, you make one mistake, you get caught with your hand on someone's ass, and you're gone forever, like that kind of thing. And it's interesting. It's interesting to view it from a different kind of perspective now. And for me personally, I grew up in Southern California, but I grew up in a part of Southern California that was a little bit more conservative. So I was kind of surrounded by the side that was, lambasting Monica Lewinsky and Linda Tripp and all these people, and to kind of see, starting a few years ago, seeing her TED Talk, where she talks about how she was like, I was basically the first like internet, like not sensation, but the first person to be destroyed on the internet. And this is before social media, before things could go viral like they do now in 2 seconds. But still, like she was the first person that the internet kind of dealt with, whose character was just entirely assassinated. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And at 22, like that's insane. I can't imagine being at 22 years old and having all of that displayed for the whole world, and especially because, like, she, not to say that she was like, an innocent person in this, because she made choices herself, right? Let's face it.
Yes,
she was an adult. She was over 18 years old.
Yes.
She was making choices for herself. And the way that she described it in her TED Talk was, at 21 years old or 22 years old, I fell in love with my boss. That's how she says it. So there's nothing that's not consensual there,
But the thing is that that ignores the power dynamic, like a mother.
Well,
like, you're talking about the most powerful man on the planet and an intern, right? An unpaid intern. That power dynamic is really, really powerful, and yeah, she could fall in love with her boss, but yes, she was an adult. But how many, if we talk about what's his name? Not Epstein. What's the other guy's name? The other Hollywood guy who.
Weinstein.
Weinstein.
Yes.
That's how many, right? But Weinstein. All those women were adults. All those women consented to this whole sexual thing. But we recognize that their consent was obviously, condensed on the power dynamic that, hey, you're not going to work in this town again, that type of thing. So we understand that people can be put in those power dynamics, and that's why you usually don't let people sleep with their subordinates, because that they have this power dynamic.
So I think that one of the things that's really, really interesting about the series is that Monica is actually an executive producer on the series. So you are getting the story basically from her perspective. It's like it's told from the perspective of all of the women that are involved. So there's Paula Jones, there's Linda Tripp, there's Monica Lewinsky. There's all of these women that are basically kind of telling the story through their eyes. Hillary, although so far, it's been 6 episodes so far, and she's only briefly shown up. So, but it'll be interesting. I'm waiting for when she sort of shows up more in the public. But I mean, it's been primarily focused on Monica and on Linda.
She practically rode Monica Lewinsky to the White House. I mean, she rode it to the state senatorship in New York. She was like the scorned wife. She carpetbagged from Arkansas to New York. Came in here and basically said, "I'm your new senator." And I mean, I certainly was voting against her, and that didn't help. But all she had done in the White House was a failure. She attempted to try and work in healthcare, and that was a complete debacle. And then she did nothing here, and she did literally nothing in New York. Nothing, 0 accomplishments for I don't know, dozen years or so. And then she becomes like your next president, which you have no choice over. So she really came within Donald Trump's hairbreadth of taking the White House just from this scandal, because that's the reason she became anything. I mean, everyone felt sympathy for her, and everyone was like, oh, and all of a sudden she became this superstar. So I don't. She should have 0 complaints about Monica Lewinsky, because everything that she's gotten since then has been because of this scandal.
I'm very curious to see how she really gets painted as the story progresses, because it's like all of the people that are involved, as far as the show is showing them right now, they all are. Like no one's being portrayed as like a damsel in distress, like they're all these people that have their own agency. They're making their own decisions. Like Linda Tripp especially is like she seems like somebody who was, a government service, employee for her entire career. And then got to a certain point, she was, a divorcee, and just, between that and between, her work not being fulfilling, and then getting, making it up to the White House and then getting pulled out of the White House to go to the Pentagon, just feeling like she had been scorned in so many ways in her life. It seems like, basically had this self-important, air, that she felt like she was desperate to be noticed somehow. And so she managed to find her way around. She happened to make friends with Monica, and then ended up just sort of leaking this story out, and then became the center of a lot of attention, obviously.
Well, from what I gather,
the thing is that she has to be. Well, I'm just saying, I don't know how much I believe Linda, because you leak out the president's having sex with an intern. You're like, I didn't know it would blow up. No. I don't believe that. I think that's a little.
It's there's never any suggestion that she didn't know what she was doing. Like she was absolutely intending to she's talking with book editors about wanting to write a book and like all of this kind of stuff. Like she's like the kind of person that is like I said, like desperate to be noticed, desperate to be remembered in some way, regardless of who gets thrown down, under the bus.
And she had an opportunity, and she took her shot, and by telling her put the dress in the freezer, that she knew what she was doing. She knew what was up. It's the person who I honestly feel bad for in this whole thing is Monica Lewinsky, because I feel bad because I believe that as a young, attractive woman, she was taken advantage of by her boss. Fine. But I don't think this was assault or anything like that. I think this was a power, and I think his impeachment was just like I think Trump's first impeachment, or both his impeachments weren't
15.
It's like they're all political in nature, and I think if we really just take a look at it, one thing I think Clinton's impeachment, if we just could put them up against each other, I think Clinton's impeachment had more teeth behind it than the Trump impeachment, and this is the reason why, because Bill Clinton actually committed a crime. He committed perjury, and a lot of people don't know this, but Bill Clinton actually copped to the perjury before he left office, and he was disbarred for the perjury in both the federal circuit and Arkansas. So and that was part of his plea agreement with the FBI before he left office. So he didn't have to go through. So you have someone who actually committed criminal acts who was impeached versus Trump's political impeachment. So Bill Clinton, I'm glad she's getting some justice for what happened, but I think in this Me Too movement, one thing it does show is that politics really changes the game, because Trump, Clinton, don't forget, the Democrats were so pearl-clutching, we love all women. Then it happened to be Clinton, their guy. I was like, oh, well, you know what? We can overlook this one. Trump says something bad on the bus, and oh my God, we got to get rid of him. It's just like, this is all political in nature. And I feel bad to say this, but nobody's, there's no sacred cows here.
Right. And even on the show too, because it's interesting how it portrays Bill Clinton too, because they show his the image that he shows, to the public, that's this warm person that's like he's trying to be just a simple unifier from Arkansas, just loving everyone, and he's a champion for women too. But then there's this side of him that this show shows him to be a cold, calculating politician that, he's
a sexual predator. Let's just call it what it is. Bill Clinton is a sexual predator. That's what he is. Yeah. All those women aren't lying.
Right.
And it's just, we're in this era where I'm just, even when I was listening to her TED Talk and everything else, I just want to be very careful, because agency is such an important thing. And there's almost like this fight over agency, especially in the Me Too era, where we're pushing that line into, this enthusiastic consent being the standard, saying, well, if I can go back on it retroactively and saying, actually, I really didn't consent, even though I did consent in the moment, right? And yes, maybe that won't stand up in a court of law, but it's the court of a public opinion that's trying a lot of these things, and a lot of these effects are from the court of public opinion, not from actual court, right? Which is why, as a guy, especially a guy who's actively dating, this is something that we all have to be concerned about. Guys my age, guys younger, they call me, they ask me, they say, Andrew, what can I do to be legally safe, when I'm going out on dates, when I'm with women? I'm like, look, here's things you can do, but it's never bulletproof, because we're in this era where you've really got to consider that, and you've really got to be careful. You've got to, cross your T's and dot your I's, because that's just the era we're living in, and that's where the culture is right now. And, especially for men, it's not on their side. Now, I'm not coming out and standing for Bill Clinton. Don't get me wrong here, but what I'm saying is, when
Clinton supporter.
And Monica says in her TED Talk, she's saying, oh, well, this is a version of me I don't understand, I don't even recognize. I'm like, well, it was still you though, Monica. So yes, most powerful position, absolutely understand that quid pro quo, situation that shouldn't happen, but don't take away all of her agency. She still had some agency.
Legal mindset. I do want to mention one thing. When I grew up, and maybe this is Joe, and as a American male in my time, I grew up with people like Pepe Le Pew, right? Pepe Le Pew used to go out there. I don't know if you guys remember Pepe Le Pew. Now they've canceled. Yeah. Pepe Le Pew's not on there, but he used to go and grab the kiss them all up. Blah, blah, blah. That was sexual assault. But that's what we grew up with, and we laughed at that stuff. That stuff was funny to us, right? When I grew up, I remember, the adult men in my life were talking about, women want a strong man. You don't want a man with sensitivity. They want a man. And I remember it was like, you have to take a chance. Oh, take a chance, just kiss her. And, now if you just take a chance and kiss her, you might get locked up, right? So that changed like overnight. Overnight, it changed from
whatever happened to the Gary Coopers. Whatever happened to the Gary Coopers? Where I remember John Wayne. That was the man. Whatever happened to this?
What I'm saying is that changed so fast. Today. In maybe a couple of years, it changed where now when you go out to a bar, the game is totally different for guys now in that situation. Yeah. Now where you can go, because don't forget, remember back in the day, the honeymooners. He was joking about beating his wife. Oh, if you smack
the moon.
Yeah. You remember you would go. Remember in movies, one of the big things, you smack a woman on her butt. Oh, look at this, and she'll give you a bad. That's sexual assault now, right?
But this is I for one am kind of happy about that.
This is good. The changes are for the good. But I'm just saying how much we've changed and how much we now find out that those things that were just recently. We're talking about things that happened maybe 10, 15 years ago. Those are crimes.
I don't know if it might seem like it was overnight, but there were at least echoes of it leading up to it, because I remember in the years before Me Too, there were articles that were getting
The Sopranos, which is long before Me Too. The Sopranos. My comment: whatever happened? Now everyone's all touchy feely. Whatever happened to Gary Cooper and John Wayne?
Oh, I thought that was just you saying that.
No, I was quoting Tony Soprano complaining. He was complaining about how the fact that you couldn't do that, and that's what in the late '90s that he was complaining about. So that you're correct. I'm confirming your point, Alita, that there was a cultural shift going on even in the '90s.
Well, and even in the few years leading up to Me Too, I remember, and depending on your political persuasion, people either championed it or they lambasted it. There was and I remember there was an article that was being shared around how there were some college some college campuses that were trying to push like an intimacy contract. You had to actually sign it. Both parties had to sign it, or else it was rape. And I was like, there were so many people that were like,
crazy.
That's a quick way to kill any kind of vibe, obviously, without getting into too many details. But
hey, babe,
that was something that
just in case.
Yeah, right. It's a very awkward way of trying to push that subject, right? If things are moving in that direction. But it's so people there was already that kind of conversation that was sort of happening around consent and around what you can and can't do. But obviously things drastically changed, I would say, because of the Me Too movement. I would agree with that still.
I think too.
Go ahead.
I'll go one further. Here's the one further is that I think the framing of this, if this happened today, because immediately there'd be a PR spin on it, and let's just put it a different way. Let's put it as if there was Trump's intern, right? Had a sexual scandal with Trump, and Melania, was behind it, and it was a sexy intern who had I think we're in the WAP era, right? It would be you go girl, you get that bag, you get that money, you leave. I think there'd be a different spin on it, right? The story would come out differently today. We cannot take Monica Lewinsky and just drop her into today, because the whole story would be different. The whole
also because who the president is.
So I would agree. I would agree with that. Yeah. Because remember the Stormy Daniels story. I remember was coming out around the same time that Matt Lauer was taken off of the Today Show, and I remember I had some coworkers that were like all up in arms about Trump and like, oh, he's this scumbag, he's terrible. And then when Matt Lauer happened, they were like, oh, but I really like Matt Lauer, and I'm like, got to be consistent, right? We've got to be consistent. If you're upset about this one, you've got to be upset about that one, because it's the same thing. It's the same accusation. So actually, it's not even the same accusation. That one was. I mean, one was a supposedly a consensual happening, and the other one was arguably not. Where there's a button that he pressed, and then the door would close and lock, and like all kinds of stuff would happen. But it was just so shocking because of the public perception. But people, young women around my age, reacted very differently depending on what their biases were leading up to that point. So I definitely agree. If you were to put the Monica Lewinsky scandal into today's day, I don't know. I mean, it would be different because of the political parties and because of all kinds of different factors. Yeah.
Well, you can actually track the degeneracy of American society through its presidential sex scandals. And I mean this seriously. Think about this. 1960s, JFK has his dalliances.
JFK.
Hold on.
I knew
he has his dalliances with Marilyn Monroe, and the public is never informed. And the public is never informed about it. And that had been, trust me, he wasn't the first president to have dalliances. That was basically the way the press treated that sort of thing in general. We're not going to report this to the public. Then you have in 1987, you got Gary Hart, who's Democratic candidate for presidency, and he was the rising star of the Democratic Party. There was no question he was going to be the nominee for president and probably would have won, because he was facing a pretty weak George Herbert Walker Bush, and he ended up being exposed that he was having he had an affair with Donna Rice on a boat called Monkey Business, and his entire career went poof in flames because the public could not accept that someone who might be president is having an affair. This is
John Edwards.
1987. Then you fast forward to the 90s, and all of a sudden we're indoctrinated to the concept of our world leader sitting in the Oval Office having his cigar smoked. Then that's the next step in the degeneracy where it's like, okay, this is where we're at now. Then the next step is, you have to face facts. Even if you love Trump, I mean, the guy is basically playing around with porn stars. I mean, and we're just like, all right. He's human, like we Trump supporters. We're like, okay, I guess it's displaying the degeneracy, how our social fiber, we went from like, we can't stand to hear about this over 50 years. 50 years ago, we could not tolerate hearing about it, to slowly eroding away where now we're like, all right, so our president's banging porn stars. Okay.
Well, but I wonder, I think there's a little difference. I think there's a little difference in the sense of when it comes to politics, it's about my guy versus your guy, right? That's what it's about, right? When Trump does something bad, people explain it. When Bill Clinton does something bad, they explain it because it's about teams at that particular point. For instance, I had a lot of my left-wing friends who their biggest argument, I can't vote for Trump because he got 26 of these allegations. Then here comes Biden and his 8. And it's like, well, now what are you going to do? Well, I'm voting for the lesser of two evils. So all that goes out of the thing based on what team you're playing for. And I think this reckoning, this has always been happening. It's just that now we're a little bit more tolerant of it, and we now understand that it happens, right? We accept that these people aren't perfect, because that was the when you talk about JFK, he was a good guy. And let's not forget the politicalization of the moral high ground. That's what we're talking about, right? One side is saying these people are degenerates because they're cheating on their wives, and then it's like, well, you're cheating on your wives too, and that's what now every side is trying to take that moral high ground and politicize it for votes. And as long as that keeps happening, then we're still going to continue to have these issues.
Which is exactly why I say, look, let's just accept that it happens. Let's just not care about it anymore. Let's move on, because we're not. Let's go the other way, right, Joe? We're not going to rewind to 1950s, and I don't like anybody who's saying, hey, let's go back to 19, because that's just I'm a person who lives in reality. That's never going to happen. Right. So at this point, let's say, okay, everybody is having weird sex stuff. Everybody's got their private sex life, whatever. I don't care anymore. Let's have policy arguments. I don't care. It's going to happen.
I concur with you.
Having sex with whatever you're having sex with. You like cat boys? Don't care. Just do your thing. Let's have substantive policy arguments that actually deal with what's being legislated, not with your sexuality.
Yeah, so long as it's consensual and with adults. Right?
Yes.
Amen. Yeah.
Legal, right?
Yes. Legal mindset, not illegal mindset.
Legal.
All right?
Legal.
Yeah. No, I mean, I at the same time, though, I'm kind of thinking of this on like a broader scale. It kind of tracks also with our the way that we inherently trust or maybe don't trust so much our institutions, right? Because back in the 1950s, I think it would have been unthinkable to, I don't know, it seems to me at least, to not trust the, either the U.S. government or, various big institutions in the United States. Whereas today, it's like trust has just completely plummeted. So
we just came out of World War II too, so that's like a whole different spin on it, right? We just defeated the Nazis in World War II, so I think we trusted the government a little bit more than we do now.
Yeah. Also, Elton Banling says, I'm just gonna let you guys read it. Thank you for the super chat.
Cat girls for the win. Okay, thank you, Elton. Appreciate that.
Hey, you know what? But before I get out of here, because I have to run in a second, but I want to ask you guys a little quick question. What do you guys think about this gay Superman thing that's going on?
Oh,
like
get woke, go broke. Get woke, go broke. Sorry.
It's interesting because I kind of have two. I like number one, it's like I don't know how I feel about it, because I feel like they've just gone too far. Like at a point, I understand you're trying to be more inclusive, more diverse, that type of thing. But it's like you made him black at one instance. Now you're making him, gay. Then at one point they made him Hispanic. It's like what's going on? It's like I don't understand. My thing is that I would appreciate characters that you develop. Like, what happened to creating a character, developing that character, making us get emotionally attached to that character, and then we can have that progression instead of just taking old characters and then trying to, make them into something that they're obviously not. I don't know. Maybe I'm
have
just,
you not been paying attention to comics though? Come on, I mean, because they've been doing this with all the comics.
I have.
They did it with Star Wars. They did it with the High Republic. They've done it. I mean, come on.
Although, correct me if I'm wrong though. The character in question is actually, I thought it was a new character. I thought it was like his nephew or something that takes on the mantle.
It's something like that. Yeah.
But that's what they always do. They always make another
they're trying to.
I don't know. I mean, I personally, I don't care, what friends of mine do, what family members of mine do, whether, obviously, I love all of them just the same, regardless of what their interests are, how their identities, etc.
Yeah.
Exactly. Who they love, regardless of, exactly. So, I'm kind of looking forward to a point in time when we can all just sort of look at something like that and say, okay, like it doesn't need to be, and just sort of move on and be like, okay, but what is his character like? What's his character arc? Kind of like what you're saying, Nate. Like what is what is the thing that that any character is starting off with that they have to learn through the story and then they develop. Like that's kind of the stuff that I care about. That is. And maybe right now we're still in a time when that is enough of a detail to sort of drive a narrative for a particular character that is compelling, that groups of people or hopefully big groups of people can take away from, because like the things that I think are best in any kind of a story are when we can take a certain lesson or take, a character's growth and apply that in our own lives, right? Because it arrives at some sort of a universal truth, right? Yeah. That's the kind of thing that I'm always looking for in any kind of a story, regardless of whether that character looks like me, acts like me, thinks like me, or whatever. I'm looking for something to learn at the end of the day, that I can take on to the rest of my life. So I'm kind of looking forward to a day when there's a detail like that that's a wrinkle, and then we're just like, okay, let's move on.
Yeah, I got so thrashed when I said I was unhappy with the He-Man thing, right? And someone was like, oh, well, He-Man was always a S&M character, you never saw him kiss a woman, how do you know he wasn't always gay? And I was like, well, listen, when I was a kid, I didn't really consider any of the characters to be heterosexual or gay. I just thought it was He-Man. Go beat some people up, right? Yep. I'm like, now you're trying to force that on me when I was a kid all the way through. I never even thought of his sexuality. I never thought of the Ninja Turtle sexuality. I just thought of them as characters just doing this type of thing. And now you're trying to introduce this to characters that didn't have this. I do understand making them black and changing them, but when you start trying to change their sexuality and their race and all this stuff to try to endow it to me, I don't think kids see race. It's like when I saw the Ninja Turtles, I didn't say I want to be a green Ninja Turtle. I just love the characters, right? I love black characters, I love white characters, because I love the story. I love the characters. And now by changing those characters into this woke stuff and trying to endow it upon me, I'm not rebelling against the ideas. I'm rebelling against the understanding that this is not what I expected. And maybe woke can be done right. There are some characters that they've done woke right. I will say that, and I was happy to see it. But the best woke is done when I don't know it's woke. At the end of the story, I'm like, wow, that happened to be woke, and I didn't realize it at all. That's what I want to see, right?
Or at least it's just the character. Once again, it has a hero's journey. It's the thing they've kind of forgotten about.
Yes.
And a story arc that you can get, which goes back to Alita. You get a story, you get a message, you get something to take away. Like, I don't know if you've seen it, but like Into the Spider-Verse, I liked that movie.
Oh, I love it.
It was a good movie. Yeah. It was a good arc.
So good.
Morales,
woke as hell. Woke as hell.
But not like in your face. And the thing is, like,
no, it wasn't in your face.
No, and it had that sense of escapism, because that's why you watch these things, to escape your normal life. You are not trying to see your normal, this woke struggle projected. That's what you want to escape from, not what you want to go into, right?
Exactly.
So that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Gay Superman is gay.
And
Factual.
demonetized.
Oh no, we already are. Don't worry.
Oh, okay.
We're already unlimited ads. That was a while ago.
I'm just saying. And
they can't
the whole
cancel Dave Chappelle, but they can cancel us.
Yeah, and look, even the Dave Chappelle canceling thing is ridiculous. Like Dave Chappelle literally said some insane stuff, right? Insane stuff in the past. Like he's like Michael Jackson accusers. The Michael Jackson accusers. He said straight up, I don't believe them. And on top of that, he said those kids should have known you don't get free trips to Hawaii, kids. You know, like he said that. And he says something now. He says the stuff that he says now when they get like he just said he doesn't believe child survivors, right? And said they should have known that they were. And like, isn't that's what you cancel somebody for? Not this stuff. It's like, but again, it's it's about what team is advocating for, right? This team is saying cancel them for this. That's what you're going to do. I don't know. It's just I think right now it's an overcorrection in the market.
I think so too.
Why do people have to be defined by these things? That's what you're also describing here. When you're describing a need for a story arc, or that it's like not a new thing. You see, this is just classic leftism, where it's like you are your intersectionality. You are your intersectionality. That defines you more than your humanity, more than your characters, more than your character traits, more than anything. Whatever intersectionality you want to focus on, that is defining you as a human being. And it's sad. It's sad to think that like the only way that I don't believe this myth that is out there that the only way a gay person can find happiness is if they see gay people in every possible realm. It's the same myth they had with women breaking the glass ceiling, that until there's a female Supreme Court justice, no one could possibly envision such a thing. That because Hillary lost, now little girls everywhere are crying, thinking that no woman can ever be president. Bull. That is a lie. I don't believe any girls out there are thinking, oh my God, I'll never be able to be a president because Hillary lost. What a lie. And it's the same thing. You're saying no superheroes no gay kids can ever be happy watching Marvel until they see some gay person out there. Wait, let me ask you this. What about bald kids with chemo? We're gonna have chemo Superman also? Is that what's gonna make him happy? What about kids born with one eye? We're gonna have one eye Superman also? Why we're gonna have one-legged Aquaman? Why is it that you have to be identified by this? We are humans. I don't give a damn if you're a man, you're a woman, you're gay, you're straight, you're a dude in a dress, you're black, you're purple, you're green, you're pink, you got nose rings sticking out of your ears. We are all defined by our humanity. And when you make someone's humanity their sexuality, especially in a context that has nothing to do in general with sexuality, nothing to do with the fact this is not about gayism. When you're a little kid, you're not thinking about, wow, I wonder where my superhero would like to stick his penis. That's not what's going through your head. It's not going through your head, but they have to make that go through your head because they want little kids to be thinking about this now. They want to infiltrate into your kids' brains where now all of a sudden they start thinking about this. I wonder whether he wants to kiss boys or girls. That's what they want your kids thinking about, and that is the perverseness of what leftist Hollywood is trying to do. They're trying to drill that into little kids, that they should be thinking about this from the time they're literally 4 years old. And make a big stink about it and pretend that defines the person's humanity when we all know that is crap. It is not what defines them, and that they're all humans, we're all exactly the same, and to limit a gay person that's all they are. They're just gay. What they think, their values, that's irrelevant. They're gay. That's their whole fixation in their life is retarded and ridiculous. It's a lie, and it's an intentional lie spread by the left because they want to try and indoctrinate youth today, and it's sickening.
Yeah.
Rant over.
I love it. I like when I don't have to, on my channel, I got to be like ranting by myself. I'm so glad when there's somebody else who brings that fire. It's so good. It's so awesome, Joe. That was amazing. And by the way, I 100% agree. 100% concur. And, I never was, thinking about Monica Lewinsky, and perhaps we can transition off of this, but, when I was younger, I was so against that that overreach on the religious right side, saying, you're not going to legislate and tell me what to do, tell me how to be. But it's flipped to the exact opposite side. Well, you're telling me now that I have to have a gender neutral toy aisle. By the way, that is now California law, in case you guys didn't know that.
Yeah, I saw that.
You're telling
I didn't know that.
That is, stores have to have, a toy store over a certain size has to have a gender neutral toy aisle. So you're dictating this, you're reading this into it. And not only that, you're saying, kids, you can't express yourselves naturally. Right, you have to be unnatural, right? And you're forcing this unnatural state on them. I think it's sick. I think it's perverse, and I completely agree with you. But I'm not saying that from a religious standpoint. I'm saying that from a liberty standpoint, right?
Yep.
I'm not a religious person. I say it from a libertarian standpoint, is that you should have the ability to choose your own perversion, right? If you want to grow up and be whatever you're into, do that, but don't force it on me. Don't, and especially if I have kids, don't force it on my kids. That's disgusting, perverted, and wrong.
Amen.
Yep.
And that was a great segue. That whole lack of liberty is a great segue to our last topic here.
But my opinion completely changes on this one, by the way.
Does it?
Oh, okay.
Flip my opinion on this one.
Well, let's set the stage first. So, if for anybody that did not hear about this, I saw this and just thought we are in some weird mix between, I don't know, all kinds of different dystopian stories, 1984, whatever, you name it. So this is in Singapore. They have just tested out for the last several weeks how to have robot police. Ostensibly, the Singaporean government said that they are dealing with an aging population. The fact that they actually have, they're having a hard time finding people to police the streets, and so they have these robots, which they call Xavier, which are patrolling the streets, and they have cameras on them that enable them to detect undesirable social behavior. For instance, if you incorrectly park your bike, if you smoke in an unauthorized area, or if social distancing is not being respected. And this is terrifying to me. I mean, the idea that you have a robot that is patrolling around, sneaking in and just surveilling you constantly and reporting you when you do not have, or when you're doing anything remotely wrong. We already have, obviously, red light cameras and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, so many things here that can go wrong so quickly. What do you guys think?
I'll give my take here, and this will probably give you something to bounce off of. So being the Asian correspondent here, in South Korea here, and also, by the way, they just opened up a travel bubble between Korea and Singapore next month. So actually, I hope to be going there. I've never gone there, so I'm going to be my first time there. So I'm really looking forward to that. But
so you're speaking to the robot overlords that hopefully they will be kind to you when you.
Better come.
When you go
but
there.
Also, that don't deny my visa, please. Thank you. But the one thing I just want to say is their government has supermajority, beyond supermajority. Over 80 of their seats out of 100 are controlled by a single party, which is overwhelming support. Right, the people have overwhelmingly supported this government. So let's just say they're 100% in support of this government, right? And there have been very draconian laws in terms of social laws in Singapore for a long time. They have a long history of this. They have voted for this. They support this as a people, right? So this is something that they support as a people. This is not something that a minority is forcing on a majority. This is not something that is even controversial in a broad sense in Singapore. They cane people for spitting gum on the street or chewing gum, right? So this is something that's been the law for a while. So that being said, and saying that, hey, the people want these laws, right? It's just another method of enforcing them. Now, there has been some pushback. I've read articles that, hey, there's some things that they might be doing that they might not want them to do because there might be an invasion of privacy. But because the people of the country want that, I don't actually have as much of a problem with that. And the issue is, this isn't the United States. This is the United States, whole different conversation, right? But this is Singapore. And once again, the people have chosen that. And hey, I like countries being laboratories, just like states being laboratories of democracy. I'm okay with countries being laboratories of different concepts.
So although push back on that. So although they have a supermajority, apparently the response from people in Singapore has been very, very mixed. There are some that are are saying that, they're like, this is good, this is great, because, we have we need people to police the streets and whatnot. And then you've got other people that are like, this is RoboCop. We have RoboCop now. So, and they said that's not a good thing. So I don't know. I mean, there's also I'm not familiar enough with Singaporean politics, their government, their laws, but I do understand that their laws tend to be much more strict on social behavior than they are in the United States. But I would be very interested to hear how much their democratic process is actually truly democratic, or what.
Well, one of their most famous quotes is, "We reject Western liberal democracy." That's from one of their most famous politicians. So they don't adopt into the same model. It's sort of like economic liberal, like in terms of classic liberalism, right? Economically liberal, right? And socially conservative. So it is a unique blend, right? That we really don't have here.
Yeah. Interesting. Joe, what do you think?
Well, my first question is whether these new cops are heterosexual, homosexual, bisexual.
They identify.
I think they're gender nonconforming.
Programming neutral.
Okay, all right. That's sufficiently woke that it should be acceptable. It's hard for me to. I don't know enough about Singaporean. Is that a word? Singaporean culture. To know as far as what they've asked upon themselves. And I think we're all in agreement here that the concerns about such a thing playing out in America are horrifying, and yet it's not that difficult to imagine something like this coming soon to a precinct near you. What they rely on is facial recognition in general, and facial recognition just so we can prepare for the battle, which will come when the Democrats feel they have enough support for it, because they are the party of authority. And they'll say, this way we're not going to have racism. Well, ironically, the facial recognition system that they use is called Recognition, spelled with a K, Rekognition, Recognition. And its most serious failing is that it will misidentify some faces and say this is the same face as that when they show them two different mugshots. Hey, Uncivil Law, how are you?
Hey, how are you doing? 1 second, let me change up.
All right. Well, anyway.
Now we got a square back.
Right.
Yes.
So, and interestingly enough, the flaws with Recognition, the app, is that they apparently are really good at identifying white people and terrible when it comes to people with darker or browner skin, where like Oprah Winfrey was identified as being a white male. And that was how bad this Recognition app was. So it's really bad when it comes to trying to figure out if a black person is identifying a black person compared to, someone like Uncivil, like Kurt or Andrew. I mean, so someone like me, they'll misidentify very easily, much more likely percentage-wise. You might not realize this, but I have, significant amounts of black blood in me. A lot of people don't. I have to, unless I come out, me and Sean King. I'm actually a close relative of Sean King, he and I, and we're both very black. So I have concerns that my people and I are going to be misidentified by this app and wrongly convicted. So, yeah, I'm strongly against. But if Singapore wants to do what they want to do, go get them, Singapore.
So, Justin, thank you for your super chat. He says, I thought I heard about the LAPD was testing cop robots in their downtown parks. Not sure if true. I think this was for the purpose of COVID testing the homeless population. I did read that. I think it was maybe in the same article that I put up there earlier. And that did see some backlash because of the dehumanizing nature of it and, that kind of stuff. It's like, yeah.
And you slip it in there just to start. And that's the one thing. And I do agree with Joe completely that facial recognition technology is out there. They will be implementing it. And once you get it in one aspect of your life, you slowly accept it, creep until all of a sudden it's all recognition and you're just, totally accustomed to it.
Like cooking a lobster.
Yep. Or the frog.
Yep.
If you're French.
Yeah. Right. Kurt, what do you think? What are your thoughts on this?
I think that it's useful as a tool, and like every tool, it's morally neutral, and can be used for good and evil purposes. And so we've been identifying people based on various traits as technology has grown. So probably fingerprints would be the first major technological development in the series, and then blood factor analysis, then of course DNA. And once we were able to sequence DNA, that like changed things radically. As we saw, for example, the Golden State Killer, he seemed to stop in 86, 87, which is exactly when the first cases with DNA were being decided by the courts, maybe not coincidentally.
Yeah.
So, and going to DNA, for example, although maybe this is a bit off field, now we're able to get people like the Golden State Killer without access to their DNA. It's like your DNA is in a database, even if you've never contributed to the database. The way they got him is through familial analysis. And we're able to get down to, third cousins, which, narrows the pool. And you were able to figure out, from there and get down to a list of, I think, 5 suspects ultimately based on age. They say, like, well, he must be between this old and lived in these areas. So, so you're kind of there in some ways. So is that okay? Is that not okay? I think the facial recognition is kind of in the same vein. Its ability to identify someone reliably. I mean, the question is, how reliable does it need to be, I suppose, for what purposes you're using it for? So if it's some sort of initial inquiry versus an ultimate guilt phase, that might be a different analysis. Maybe that's too complex of analysis for the question you were asking me. I think the question you were asking me was good or bad.
Well, I just wanted to know your thoughts.
Simple answer.
Yeah. I don't know. I tend to think on the whole, if it can be used well, it's probably good. I just think we have to remember its limitations at every stage and what it can and cannot do and how reliable it is or not.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, this is only so reliable, so it's only one factor among many. Although we have to be a bit cautious, though, that it's not so unreliable, it effectively becomes junk, which is a problem, for example, with the shot spot analysis. The microphones that were supposed to pick up gun noises. Well, the problem is that things that sound like guns, for example, car backfires and fireworks and a whole lot of other things, and the reliability is also off, so that basically turned into junk. So I guess it has to be better than junk, and we go from there.
And by the way, if you guys want to, because I see a lot of people in the chat mentioning Skynet, if you want to really get scared and hear the Skynet stuff, it's Palantir, Palantir, making the push to be the central operating system for all U.S. defense systems. If you haven't heard about that one, that is the real Skynet. So that's an interesting one, which we want to make sure works correctly.
I want to make sure I get this pronunciation right for the future overlord. Palantir is how it prefers his name?
All hail Palantir.
Make sure I get that right.
Like Emperor Palatine. There you go.
Yes.
Oh, man.
It's a pal.
Yeah, so Kurt,
Yo.
I just want to ask you, you have no concerns about this being abused by our overlords in government?
I mean, I'm always concerned, but as I was trying to say, that it's a tool. The tool is morally neutral, and its application becomes morally questionable. And I was trying to analogize it to other tools and other things that have been potential for abuse in the past. But
no, and Iron Maiden is a tool also. But okay, that's a little bit of a dramatic analogy.
For example,
that's a bit of an
There are facial recognition robots at the Seoul airport here, right? They go around, they can scan you, see you, and they tell you where the concourse is and where stuff is, and they can see if you're in distress, blah blah blah. They're helpful, right? They're completely neutral. They're giving you airport information, right?
Right.
They're not giving you tickets. So I mean, the technology itself is that, which I think what Kurt's saying is neutral.
No, I understand the technology, but in the context of using it for police force, I mean, I only brought facial recognition as one thing, but you don't have concerns that maybe the next step, which is not too far away, is you can affix onto it some heat sensors, and they can basically be looking into every human's house.
Well, we do have case law on that.
Yeah. No,
the heat sensor thing.
Well, hold on. For how long till they reinterpret that, right? Because it's based on the capabilities. So they say, oh, well, the capabilities of the robot have gotten to the fact that they can.
Well, the case law was built. The case law on the heat sensor thing was built around the fact that the normal person doesn't use heat sensors in their everyday life. So the expectation of privacy was there. So until we have heat sensors reliably on our iPhones and we're all peering into each other's houses, I guess the case law will remain intact.
Well, we've got LiDAR now, right? I mean, you've got a bunch of stuff that's going on the iPhone. So who knows?
Oh boy.
I mean,
no, Joe, I agree with your sense of worry, right? Because that was like my first thought when I saw this was, and maybe it's just being a lawyer. My first thought was, how is this going to be abused, right? Because any time that we do create a new tool, and I do agree with you, Kurt, that any tool can be abused, right? It's like it's like the whole debate about firearms. A fire, people say guns don't kill people. People do, regardless of what the weapon is. So, just like any other tool, this can be abused or it can be used for good. And I think it's usually the tech inventor's job to come up with the idea and dream of the capabilities for the good, right? And then it's the lawyer's job to think of all of the ways that it can be abused and how we might need to put some clips on those wings a little bit to protect people's rights.
Along the same lines, also predictive law enforcement and also predictive sentencing raises similar concerns. So the idea of using AI or predictive models to create sentencing for people who are convicted, or the idea of using AI predictive models to figure out where to send law enforcement or who to investigate and things like that. So these domains of inquiry are extremely relevant, and I hope I didn't mean to imply anything else. There was a comment in the chat talking about the slippery slope fallacy. It's one of my least favorite fallacies of all time, because the slippery slope fallacy says, because this happened, the next thing doesn't have to happen. I'm like, yeah, that's true, but yeah, saying what might happen next is always a good concern, especially for the lawyers. Because when we lay down this foundational brick of law, because we all understand the concept that we have cited cases from 400, 500, 600 years ago, and hey, the brick we lay down today, who knows what will happen next? So we're rightfully paranoid about what will happen in the future, in my view.
It's our job to be paranoid. Yeah. So so that's I thought that was just a very, very interesting. I mean, on the plus side though, I can think of one potential benefit to having a robot police force, right? So one area of law that's been very contentious is qualified immunity, right? That police officers will abuse someone. The police officers will abuse, will do something.
I need to get another Red Bull for this one.
Okay,
Steve Layton was talking on his channel about, apparently there was a QI case out of the Ninth Circuit where the cop was ordered to lie on the stand, refused to lie, they fired him, and there's no QI for that. I have to cover that case because that sounds like some bullshit. I'm not doubting Steve Layton. I'm doubting the case. It's like, oh, you can be fired for not obeying the order to lie, but please continue telling us about QI some more.
Yeah. But to finish my thought though about the potential of having robot police force is that you have the possibility of AI robots that understand exactly where the constitutional line is, and they're not allowed to cross that line. Under the current case law, for QI, if a qualified immunity for people in the chat. So for people that for anyone that doesn't know, sorry, let's give a little bit of a background. Qualified immunity is where a police officer or often other government employees, but typically we're talking about police officers, they have a certain amount of immunity for what otherwise would be a case where a person's civil rights may have been violated. So, for example, police beat up a guy, at some point, whatever, you could have a civil rights case.
Arrest someone. Anytime they arrest someone.
Sure. Yes. Yeah. Like an unlawful arrest, But so part of the case law for qualified immunity is that the line says that if I remember correctly, a reasonable police officer has to have an understanding of like where the constitutional line is, right? And so as over time, one of the problems with qualified immunity is that over time, case law has not been developing because of the ways that the court has sort of lined up their analysis. So there's like a two-pronged analysis. They don't even get to the case before they decide, okay, there's no qualified, or there's no issue here because there is qualified immunity. So there's no developing case law of like, okay, but in this particular case, if this guy had known, this would have been unconstitutional. So future police officers don't necessarily know, like, well, that case that went before the court, that would have been an unconstitutional thing had it not been for qualified immunity. So I don't know if I'm explaining this clearly at all, but basically you could train these lawyers to know, or lawyers, these police robots to basically be mini lawyers at the same time and know exactly where the constitutional line is and basically effectively get rid of qualified immunity.
Can you
we just get rid of qualified immunity without all that? Because it's stupid.
Well, I'm just saying the reason why I say that is that, I mean, there's been a long argument to get rid of qualified immunity for a long time anyway, but it seems like there's a lot of hesitation, to that on the Supreme Court, et cetera.
Well, then you're going to hold the programmers negligent, the city negligent for programming the computer in a way that is systematically racist or, does whatever, I mean, there's going to be some sort of disparate effect. There's going to be a disparate effect. I'm going to tell you that right now. Even if it's .001, there's going to be a disparate effect, right? You can't program it to not, right? You can't program it to say, well, we've arrested 6 people who are, Vietnamese today. We got to, make the rounds, in Koreatown. I mean, you can't. I mean, how are you going to program equity into it? And who's going to be programmed?
I guess you could. It just sounds like really stupid.
That doesn't mean that somebody's not going to make the argument, though, right?
I mean, you could do it like, you could program it that way. It's like, the black population is 25%. We are already arrested 30% of our arrests today are black, so no more black arrests until we arrest some other people. I mean, you could do that. Just be really stupid.
Yes. Yes. So,
unintended consequences are always possible like that, right?
And who's programming it? Do we trust?
Right. That's another question.
We say lawyers, but I mean, look. I trust you guys, but I mean, it's still there's
very
few people. Well, I mean, you're a whole nother story, but
it won't end well.
Yeah. What is that? It was Littlefinger from Game of Thrones. Your first mistake was trusting me. So but there's very few people that I would say, DAs, that I would say, hey, I trust this DA, right? Especially if they're a political appointee, to come and program this robot correctly. Come on.
Yeah.
Why do you want to get rid of qualified immunity, Kurt?
Well, the qualified immunity is a two-part standard. You have to show that there was a constitutional right that was in play, and then part 2, where it always fails, is it has to be clearly established. As the Supreme Court has made clear, when we say clearly established, we can't view it at too high a level of generality, which means as a practical matter, you have to find basically a case that's very close in a factual pattern. And if you don't find one, then there's no qualified immunity. And then what's really even worse is that way more often than not, the Court of Appeals then fail to establish the clearly established law. Like, you just had that, for example, in the case I was just talking about, or that Leda was talking about. It's like they didn't take the opportunity to say, oh, and by the way, here's now the clearly established law going forward. Way more often than not, they don't do that. So you never get the first case. Because you never have the case that's clearly established, because the Court of Appeals never clearly establishes it, so it's never clearly established. Yes. So I don't like it for that reason. Also, I thought the old standard we had before was perfectly fine. We talked about the reasonably prudent officer, which is just the reasonable man test, which we all know and love from ancient history. Now, what would the reasonably prudent officer of normal training and normal intelligence do in this situation? What would they understand? And they say this is just completely unreasonable behavior. Instead of that, we have this clearly established, so they can actually knowingly violate your rights. I saw that case on my channel where we did that. There was a policy in Denver that said you have to allow the public to film, and this would have been policy for 9 years, and the cops then detained a guy who was filming the police, right? So he sues under 1983. And the court says, well, the city's policy is interesting and all, but 1983 is a matter of federal law. And at this point, in history, because when the thing occurred, at this point in history, it wasn't clearly established the public had a right to film. So even though they were knowingly violating policy, they still weren't liable because it hadn't been clearly established. Yeah. I think this is messed up. So I like the old standard of how about the reasonably prudent officer of normal intelligence, and what would a reasonable officer or / reasonable person do, instead of I can get away with basically murder, or I can get away with harassing this guy filming, I can get away with stealing money from this guy, that happened, I can get away with firing the cop for refusing to lie on the stand, that's a thing that happened, and so forth and so on. It's a completely broken standard. Does that adequately answer your question?
Yes.
So if you
let me just say that Kurt explained qualified immunity way better than I did. I completely admit that.
I've covered quite a lot of QI cases on my channel.
My explanation was just so like around the corner and coming back. I mean, you did it. The clearly established exactly. Listen to Kurt. What he said. Continue, Joe.
If we strip away qualified immunity, so in that case, cops would be held to a reasonably prudent cop standard.
Yeah,
that's what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, I could accept that.
Yeah.
I mean, like Kurt said, I mean, it's something that we all know how to deal with. All lawyers know how to do it. That's like something that you know, we can wrap our minds around. And a jury can wrap their minds around.
Right. Maybe, by the way, a lot of people in the audience are asking.
Maybe don't walk up to the dog who's tethered at the tree and already at the end of the tether. Maybe don't walk up to the dog and shoot the dog in the head. How about that? That was a QI case I covered.
No, that's awful. That's awful.
Yeah, how about that? How about not doing
horrible. That? Yeah, seriously. So, and just to clarify, so that the big problem with the clearly established standard really is, like, I think that the biggest problem is because of the fact that there's that two-pronged test, right? So they have to say, you know, was this clearly established? What, Kurt, remind me.
Yeah,
this clearly established?
That there has to be a constitutional right that's violated, and that right has to be clearly established.
Right.
And then the kicker is it can't be at too high level generality. So a lot of times, when people in chat will say, "How about the First Amendment?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you're way off.
Yeah,
that's not going to cut the day. How about the Fourth Amendment? No, you're going to need something a lot more than that."
But the part that really gets it, though, is the fact that because of standards of judicial economy, right? Like, courts don't want to spend time analyzing something that they don't have to. So as soon as they're like, okay, well, you know, this is a right that was clearly established, was not clearly established, they answer that question first, and then they answer whether or not it was constitutional, right?
Well.
So they don't even get to that second question.
No, that's where it always fails. They always fail on the second question. Yeah, because number one always basically triggers. That's a violation of the Constitution. I mean, not always. Occasionally you'll see it not trigger, but basically 90% of the cases it triggers. But then where it fails,
But the Supreme Court actually said in one of their cases that they were like, well, you can answer them out of order. So you only have to answer one. So therefore we don't have any developing case law where courts say, okay, but in this situation it would be unconstitutional. So you have the next case that's coming afterwards, or, you know, cops that are watching, you know, supposedly watching.
I don't buy the judicial economy argument. I think the courts of appeals are a bunch of pussies, because I mean, they're already there, right? They're already there. They already had the hearing. They already had the decision. They're already writing like 30 pages anyway about the whole fact and what all that happened. How hard is it to say, and oh, by the way, going into the future, you can't do this anymore? How hard is that? They're a bunch of pansies. The entire damn federal courts of appeal, all of them, they all suck. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree that it's not good that they're not answering that question, because it's creating this situation where, you know,
I wouldn't be so grumpy about qualified immunity if the courts of appeal were required as part of their decision just to declare. How about declare what the law going forward would be? That'd be great. How about just a little declaratory judgment where we're at it, instead of like, oh, this isn't the law now. It's like, do you want to speak to the future? No, we're good. Really? Okay. Thanks. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
I want to go on record as saying that if this stream gets demonetized, it's totally because Kurt just used the P word. It's not on me at all. So.
I remember some of the things you were saying earlier, and I was also trying to troll the chat, to help.
None of the hand gestures at all.
Yeah.
So, Eldritch Blasted, thank you for your super chat. He wants to know when Uncivil Law and Good Logic are going to have a drinking death match.
Yeah, you see, the thing is, I'm not sure that's necessarily great for my reputation. Well, the last time when I had the match with Nick, it is possible that a prudent observer could potentially come to the conclusion that I was not acting in the most professional manner possible, and I'm not sure that I necessarily want to repeat any such behavior that could potentially lead to such misconclusions.
Interesting.
Right. Look, you gotta angle yourself and position yourself whatever way is gonna actualize your channel best. So I respect that totally.
And your chakras.
And I don't no, I don't think you're chicken.
Yeah,
at all. I don't know why anyone would think such a thing.
I don't know why it's necessarily bad to want my channel to grow, because I heard a criticism recently, basically that it's like, why are you always pushing for your channel to grow? I'm like, why is this bad exactly that I want my channel to grow?
Because I mean, you're putting out content. You want things to go well. You want more people to see it. You want it to grow. Maybe you want it to be your income.
Legalbytes, all things being equal, would you like 1 million subs?
Yeah.
So yeah, okay.
That would be great. That would be fantastic.
I assume that's a unanimous consensus.
I would hate it. I would hate it. It'd be horrible.
Yeah, sure you would.
It's so bad that I will take that burden on myself.
Yeah.
It's so bad that you would need to start selling Indochino suits.
Yeah. Indochino, I have to say, actually does make a good suit. So it's not all bad.
I know. I'm just kidding. I'm just
look like a lawyer. He probably makes $3,000 every time he reads that stupid advertisement.
Well, yeah, I know he quit his practice because he's making enough money.
I'm sure he is,
which isn't surprising.
And that's good for him.
We were talking off air.
Now.
We were talking off air about how lucrative his level of success can be, or even not quite his level.
Yeah, well, I can tell you the level of success that I have, and I like doing the math. I'm like, well, if it scales,
right,
anything close to this, I'm like, look at that.
Your mouth to God's ear. So,
but
man,
it's still fun regardless. I mean, look,
of course,
that's why we are here.
Yeah,
I have fun since day one.
I get to geek out law.
Yeah.
And talk about things I care about with people who might actually listen to me occasionally. It's like
and make some really good friends. Like it's awesome. Like I feel like I actually have some like professional friends that I have made, not because they happen to be in my firm,
right.
We're forced
not to knock anyone that I've worked with before, but
we're a goddamn bar association at this point. It's great.
Sometimes quite literally a bar association if Brigade is involved, right?
Yeah.
So I think that for me about does it. Anything anyone else wants to bring up?
There's a lot of news, but this was enough for one day, and it's 2 a.m. here, so I'm very excited about it.
Oh my god! You're still in the Far East?
I will be here for a while, so yes.
Oh
nice.
My god!
Nice.
I think people in your era called it the Orient, but we don't do that anymore.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
No.
Wow.
Alrighty.
Good luck there.
So okay, well, I mean, we're at almost 2 hours here, and this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you, Legal Mindset, for joining. Thank you, Good Logic, for joining. Thank you, Uncivil Law, for joining, and also belatedly thank you to Nate for joining earlier. This has been a fantastic live stream, as always, having you guys. If anybody is watching that has not seen any of these guys' channels, they all have channels on YouTube. They all have pages on Locals. Kurt, do you have Locals? I
have signed up for an account just to save the account. But,
okay.
I still don't know what to do with it really.
Okay.
It exists.
Yeah, I'm relatively new on Locals too. I've started to sort of work on my social media presence outside of YouTube a little bit, but I'm it's one thing that I'm definitely working on.
Maybe I'll just hang out on yours until we have a falling out, and I'll be good for content.
Sounds good. We'll have lawyers fighting like the drama channels, right? We'll make content for everybody else. So
Nice.
so thanks everyone for joining.
Here's 8 reasons this lawyer's a hack. Number 6.
Oh no. So okay, yes, and Indy wants to show her appreciation too. So yeah, if you guys are still watching, you haven't liked it yet, be sure to like the video, share it, subscribe, all the good YouTube-y stuff. So otherwise, we're gonna sign out for now. So see you guys until next time.